When Abraham Lincoln was 45 years old, a great chance to step up came to him. His friends sent him to the Illinois legislature. He had then not $1 with which he could buy clothes to wear to that place. A friend let him have the funds of which he was in need, sure that they would come back to him. At first, the young man in the new place did not talk or do much. He felt that it was best for him, then, to wait and learn. He made a studwise of the new sort of men about him at that time. When it came his turn to speak, he said just what he thought on the theme that came up. His mind told him that all who paid taxes or bore arms ought to have the right to vote. He was not afraid to say that, though men of more years and more fame than he took the author side. He was brave, but not rash. His speech was plain, but to the point. He did not boast. He did not try to hide the fact that he was poor. There were, sometimes, those who called themselves men, who would point at his plain clothes of blue jeans and laugh at them, and try to get authors to do the same. The great length of body, the toil-worn hands, the backwoods ways made talk for foes, but Lincoln bore these flings well, and often used them for jokes. Though this high post had come to Abraham Lincoln, he did not feel too proud to do the simple deeds of kindness which he had done all through his life. It seems that one day he went out with some lawmakers for a ride on the prairies. He passed a place where a pig was stuck in the mud. The poor beast looked up at him as if begging his help. The look plainly said that death must soon come unless the horseman gave his aid. Lincoln was wearing his best clothes at that time. They had been bought with the money his friend had loaned him. A new suit could not be his for a long time. And yet, even though gone past, and at the risk of jeers from his comrades, he went back, got off his horse, and pulled the pig out up on firm land. To be sure, there was mud on his clothes, but his heart was free from regret. Though Abraham Lincoln had been admitted to the bar and had been made a member of the legislature, still he went on with his studies, never letting a day go by on which he did not give some hours to books. These books told about mathematics, astronomy, rhetoric, literature, logic, and author things with hard names. While at work with chain and tools, tackling the length and breadth of the land, Mr. Lincoln earned from $12 to $15 each month. He used a part of this small sum to pay up an old debt and also had to help his kin from week to week. But he felt he must give up this small sure money for the sake of his new start in life, though the gains were by no means sure to be large. He said he would take his chance at the law. It was in April, 1837, that Mr. Lincoln rode into Springfield, on a horse a friend had loaned him. A few clothes were all that he owned, and these he had in a pair of saddle bags, strapped on his horse. He drew up his steed in front of Joshua Speed's store and went in. "I want a room, and must have a bedstead and some bedding. How much shall I pay?" he asked. His friend Speed took his slate and counted up the price of these things. They came to $17. "Well," said Abraham Lincoln, "I've no doubt but that is cheap, but I've no money to pay for them. If you can trust me till Christmas, and I earn an thing at law, I'll pay you then. If I fail, I fear I shall never be able to pay you." Lincoln's face was sad. He had worked hard all his life, had helped scores of folks, and now, after so many years, when he much needed money, he had none. The friend storekeeper tried to cheer the good man. "I can fix things better than that," he said. I have a large room and a doubly bed upstairs. You are. Will come to share my room and bed with me. So Abraham Lincoln took his saddle bags upstairs, and then came down. With a bright look on his face, and said, There, I am moved. In Springfield at that time was a man who had been with Lincoln as a soldier in the Indian War. This was Major John T. Stuart. He took Lincoln in with him as a law partner, and their firm name was Stuart and Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln's first fee was $3 made in OC/BR, 1837. There was not much law work the first summer. What there was had to be paid for, often, in butter, milk, fruit, eggs, or dry goods. In those days folks lived so far apart, that courts were held first in one place, and then in another. So Lincoln rode about the land, to go with the courts and pick up a case here and there. In this way he saw lots of people, made warm friends, and told scores of bright tales. At no time did he use a word which was not clear to the dullest juryman. All things were made plain when Lincoln tried a case. Not on why was he plain and straight in what he said and did, but his heart was ever tender and true. Story is told of a thing that took place on one of the circuit trips. Lincoln saw two little birds that the wind had blown from their nest, but where that nest was one could not say. A close search at last brought the nest to light, and Lincoln took the birds over to it and placed them in it. His comrades laughed at him as he jumped on his horse and was riding away. That's all right, boys, said he. But I couldn't sleep tonight unless I had found the mother's nest for those birds. All habits of Studway were kept up, and in time fame as a speaker came to Abraham Lincoln. As a writer, too, he was prized, even at the age of a score. In 9 years he wrote so well up on themes of the day that the Sangamon Journal and Author Poppers would print his articles in full. In the year 1840, Miss Mary Todd of Kentucky became Lincoln's wife, and helped him save his funds so well that, in a short time he was able to buy a small house in Springfield. Then, soon, he bought a horse and he was very glad to do so. By that year so well did Lincoln speak that his name was put up on the Harrison Electoral ticket, that he should canvass the state. As he went about the land he often met old friends, those who had known him as a poor boy. Sometimes it chanced that he could be of use to them. There was a Jack Armstrong who once fought Lincoln when he was a clerk at a Futz. The son of this man was in Trubly. The charge was murder. His father being dead, the mother, Hannah, who knew and had been kind to the boy. Lincoln went, now, to the man Lincoln to plead with him to save her son. The case was taken up, and much time and thought given to it. Things which were false had been told, but Lincoln was able to search out and find the truth, and when at last he saw it and made authors see it, the lad went free. Though, at first, Abraham Lincoln thought much of Andrew Jackson, as time went on he found that Jackson held views that he could not hold. So Henry Clay Daniel Webster, came to be known as an anti-Jackson man and made his first entry into public life as such. At the age of 31 he was known as the ablest Whig stump speaker in Illinois. Two great Whigs at that time were Daniel Webster and Henry Clay. Lincoln was sent, as a Whig, in 1846, to the Congress of the United States, and he was the sole Whig member from Illinois. Of course, friends were proud to feel that the poor backwoods lad had come to so much fame. Some of the old folks said they knew it was in him. Others said I told you so. Lincoln had the same good sense that he had from the start. He made up his mind to watch and wait. He knew that he could learn a deal from such great men as Webster and Clay. When he had to speak, he said just what he thought in a plain, strong way. He did not want war with Mexico. He was not alone in this. But he thought that men who fought in that war, brave soldiers, should have their reward. A thing that was of great weight Lincoln did at that time. He put in a bill, which was to free the slaves in the District of Columbia. By his vote more than once for the famed William T. Prosix, so he hoped to keep slavery from the territories gained through the war with Mexico. Though some fame came then to Lincoln, funds did not. Springfield, home, and law work followed when the term in Congress was over. Those who took the author side from Whigs were called Democrats. They made a strong party in Illinois, and were led by a bright man whose name was Stephen A. Douglas. His friends called him the Little Giant. This, they thought, would make known to all that though he was small in size he was great in mind. He was well thought of as a member of Congress, could make a good speech, was a fine lawyer, knew how to dress well, and had a way of making folks think as he did. While hard at work in law CASCS, all at once, the calm of Lincoln's life was broken by a thing that took place in 1854. A plan or promise had been made that slavery should not spread north of the state of Missouri. When the new states of Kansas and Nebraska were about to be made, this good promise was thrown aside and a bill was passed by Congress which said that the folks who had their homes in those states might say that there should or should not be slavery there. The man who put in that bill was Stephen A. Douglas. The bill roused great rage in those who felt that slavery had gone quite far enough. Most folks at the North felt that the time had come to cry halt. All through the states this theme was so much talked about that two sides were made, one of which was formed of those who were willing that slavery should go on and spread, while the author was formed of those who did not wish to have black men held as slaves in the new lands. Speeches were made in great halls, and crowds came to hear what the speakers had to say. In Illinois, Lincoln, who all his life had been against slavery, spoke straight to the people, showing them the wrong or the injustice of that bill. His first speech on this theme has been called one of the great speeches of the world. He was brave and dared to say that if America were to be a free land, the stain of slavery must be wiped out. He said a house D6 dead against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved, I do not expect the house to fall, but I expect it will cease to be D6 dead. It will become all one thing or all the other. He either the opponents of slavery will arrest the further spread of it and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is in the course of ultimate extinction, or the advocates will push it forward till it shall become alike lawful in all the states, old as well as new, north as well as south. This speech made a great stir in the land. Some men and women had worked for years to do and say the best thing for the slave, but not one had put things just right till Lincoln said that if America would live it must be free. Lincoln's friends told him that they felt that his speech would make foes for him and keep him from being senator. The good man then said, "Friends, this thing has been retarded long enough. The time has come when those sentiments should be tiered, and if it is decreed that I should go down because of this speech, then let me go down linked to the truth, let me die in the advocacy of what is just and right. From the first, Lincoln felt as if he were in the hands of God and led by him in what he was to say and do in the cause of freedom for all. He felt that he himself was not much, but that justice and truth would live though he might go down in their defense. Though not quite half a century had then gone by since his dear mother had held him in her arms in their poor Kentucky home, and it was less, too, than a score and 5 years since he swung his axe in the woods on the banks of the Sangamon to earn his bread and that of his kin from day to day, still, with the great prize before him of that high post in the land, which he had long hoped to gain, he casts from him all chances for his further rise, and in that hour stands forth one of the truest, noblest men of all time. Friends kept saying to Lincoln, "You've ruined your chances. You've made a mistake. Aren't you sorry? Don't you wish you hadn't written that speech?" Straight came the answer, and it was this: "If I had to draw a pen across my whole life and erase it from existence, and I had one poor little gift or choice left as to what I should save from the wreck, I should choose that speech and leave it to the world as it is." Men then began to think as they had never thought before. It seemed as if a death shot had been sent straight to the heart of Slaver Y. That speech was, however, but the first of a hard and fierce struggle between two sides of one of the greatest case tians ever brought before and why not tian. Lincoln and Douglas went up and down the state of Illinois talking in halls and wigwams as the buildings were called where they spoke. Sometimes they made a speech on the same day, out of doors, where large crowds would come. Both often held forth in the same hall, one Macing's views known before dinna and the author talking on the author's side after dinna. Lincoln was not known to make fun of him one, but there were scores who made fun of him and tried to make him gry. But he swore all their scoff with sound statements, and found friends where authors would have made foes. Douglas had a way of telling folks that Lincoln said some things which he did not say. This was hard to bear, but Lincoln would tell the crowds just what he did say at such and such a meeting, and people would believe him.
Lincoln's printed speeches went through all the states, and soon folks outside of his own state had a wish to hear him. They felt that he was at the head of the party for real liberty. So the time came when Abraham Lincoln spoke. East and West, in Illinois, Ohio, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Kansas, and New York, and crowds would be still while he pled the cause of liberty and struck blows at Slaver Y. It is said that when he spoke in New York he prepared, in every wise sense of the word, like one of the plain folks among whom he loved to be counted. At first sight one could not see in why thing great in him save his great size, which would strike one even in a crowd. His clothes hung in a loose way on his giant frame, his face was dark and had no tinge of color. His face was full of seams and bore marks of his long days of hard toil, his eyes were deep set and had a look of sadness in them. At first he did not seem at ease. The folks who were in that place to hear him were men and women of note as well as those not so well known. There was a sea of eager faces to greet him and to find out what that rude child of the people was like. All soon formed great ideas of him, and these held to the end of his talk. He met with praise on all sides. He rose to his best when he saw what the folks thought of him. He spoke in his best vein. His eyes shone bright, his voice rang, his face seemed to light up the whole place. For an hour and a half he held sway in that hall and spoke straight to the point, class ing with these words: "Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it." A tale is told of Lincoln's going with a friend, while in New York, to visit a Sunday school at 5 Points, a place where waifs were brought each Sabbath, to meet kind men and women whose wish was to help them. As the good man saw the poor children from the slums of the city, his tender heart was deeply touched. His own poor childhood came up before him, And when urged to speak he said words which brought tears to all eyes. He told them that he, too, had been poor, that his toes stuck out through worn shoes in winter, that his arms were out at the elbows and he shivered with the cold. He said he had found that there was on ly one rule: always do the best you can. He said he had always tried to do the best he could, and that if they would follow that rule that they would get on somehow. When he felt that he had talked long enough and tried to bring his words to a close, there were cries of "Go on! Do go on!" and so he told his young hearers man why things that they were glad to hear. Then they sang some of their songs for him, and one of these moved him to tears. He asked for the book where those words were printed, and a cop why have ing been given to him. He put the little hymnal into his pocket, and many a time in after days drew it out to read. At last, as he was leaving the school, one teacher, who had not caught his name, when the head of the mission, Mr. Pease, gave it out, went up to him as he passed and asked what it was. The great man said, in low and quiet tones, "Abraham Lincoln, from Illinois."